I'm shocked Star Trek's most famous Klingon weapon didn't appear until TNG Season 4. For a franchise so deeply steeped in lore, world building, and iconic visuals, Star Trek has always been surprising in how slowly some of its most memorable elements develop. Think about it, the Borg didn't arrive until Season 2 of The Next Generation. The concept of Section 31 didn't emerge until Deep Space Nine. And even something as ubiquitous as the holodeck wasn't part of the original series at all. But perhaps one of the most surprising late arrivals in the Star Trek universe is the Klingon bat'leth, arguably the most iconic alien melee weapon in the franchise, yet it didn't appear until The Next Generation Season 4, Episode 1, The Best of Both Worlds, Part 2. That's right, no bat'leths in the original series. None in the first 3 seasons of TNG. This brutal, curved blade with its dual-handled design and menacing silhouette, practically synonymous with Klingon culture today, was a latecomer. And that delay is genuinely shocking when you consider how central Klingons and their warrior ethos have always been to Star Trek. Bat'leth, a blade that became a symbol. By now, the bat'leth is as much a part of Star Trek's visual language as the Starfleet Delta insignia or the warp nacelles of a Federation starship. It's more than a weapon, it's a symbol. It embodies the Klingon warrior code, their reverence for personal combat, and their ceremonial traditions. It has graced countless battles, been hung proudly in Klingon homes, and even appeared in Star Trek cosplay and fan collections across the globe. But before Season 4 of The Next Generation, the Klingons were already well established. Worf had been on the bridge of the Enterprise D since the pilot. The original series introduced the Klingons as early as Season 1. By the 1980s, their design, language, and philosophy were central to Star Trek lore, yet we never saw a bat'leth. How could such an obvious and expressive extension of Klingon identity be missing from the narrative for so long? Early Klingons had guns, not glory. To understand this absence, we have to look at how Klingons were first conceived. The original series Klingons were more Cold War metaphor than fully fleshed out culture. They were antagonistic, cunning, and imperialistic, mirroring fears of Soviet-style expansionism. But they weren't the noble warriors we know today. They didn't speak in honor-bound rhetoric. They weren't interested in dying gloriously in battle. In fact, they weren't even particularly martial. They carried disruptor pistols, wore brown jumpsuits, and looked more like budget Romulans with spray tans than the forehead-ridged Klingons of later Trek. Swordplay and melee combat were nowhere to be found. If a bat'leth had been introduced back then, it would have seemed totally out of place. The motion picture era brought change, but no blades. Star Trek, the motion picture 1979 was the first time audiences saw the redesigned Klingons with their now iconic forehead ridges, elaborate armor, and guttural speech. This was a clear departure from the TOS era, but even through the search for Spock and the undiscovered country, no Klingon was seen wielding a traditional melee weapon. They still carried disruptors. Their new visual aesthetic screamed warrior, but their combat style was more shoot first than fight with honor. Klingon culture was slowly evolving. In the search for Spock, Kruge kills his own gunner for disobedience. In the undiscovered country, General Chang quotes Shakespeare before battle. The seeds of the warrior philosopher Klingon were there. But the physical representation of that warrior culture, something as primal as a sword, was still missing. Enter TNG Season 4. The bat'leth is born. All of that changed with The Next Generation Season 4. In The Best of Both Worlds, Part 2, Worf uses the bat'leth during a training scene in the Enterprise D's gym. It's a blink and you'll miss it debut, but it marks the birth of something extraordinary. The design of the bat'leth was created by Dan Curry, TNG's visual effects producer and a martial arts expert. Curry didn't just design the blade. He choreographed fighting styles for it, building an entire martial language around its curved, flowing structure. The bat'leth was more than just a prop. It was an artifact of culture. The way Worf held it with reverence and precision signaled that this wasn't just a weapon. It was a rite of passage, a spiritual totem, and a cultural cornerstone. In one stroke, Star Trek had given Klingons their Excalibur. Why did it take so long? So why did it take nearly 25 years from the original series premiere to the first appearance of the bat'leth? There are several reasons. 1. Budget and practicality. Swordplay is expensive to choreograph and dangerous to film. Early Star Trek operated on tight budgets. Even in TNG, most action was either phaser-based or minimal. Introducing a complex, custom-designed melee weapon would require not only prop construction, but also expert fight coordination. 2. Evolving Klingon lore. The Klingons of TOS were more like space gangsters than proud warriors. The notion of a death before dishonor, combat-centric culture didn't truly take root until TNG began reshaping the Klingon Empire. Worf's presence demanded a deeper dive into Klingon rituals, beliefs, and combat training. Once the lore caught up, the bat'leth was a natural extension. 3. The right character, at last. No Klingon character before Worf had the narrative space to embody the full range of Klingon tradition. Worf was the franchise's first long-term Klingon protagonist. That gave TNG writers the chance to introduce Klingon culture on a personal, intimate level. And what better way to do that than through a sacred weapon? The bat'leth's rise to stardom. Once the bat'leth appeared, it was everywhere. Worf used it in duels, training sessions, and even formal ceremonies. Episodes like Reunion, Redemption, and Rightful Heir all featured the weapon. In DS9, bat'leths became part of larger battle sequences, especially during the Dominion War. Voyager brought them along through characters like B'Elanna Torres. Even the Kelvin timeline reboot films featured variations of Klingon swords, showing how essential the aesthetic had become. Perhaps the most powerful symbol of the bat'leth's importance came in the Deep Space Nine episode, The Sword of Kallus, where the mythical original bat'leth of Kallus himself was discovered. That episode revealed just how spiritually and politically important the weapon was to Klingon identity. It was the equivalent of finding the Holy Grail and Excalibur rolled into one. A blade that defined a people, the bat'leth wasn't just a cool sci-fi weapon. It redefined how audiences understood the Klingons. It gave them a tangible symbol of their honor culture, something that could be passed down through generations, used in ceremonial duels, and wielded in moments of personal triumph or tragedy. It also became a storytelling device. Bat'leths were used to determine rightful succession in Klingon politics, to avenge family dishonor, and to express personal grief. When Worf used a bat'leth, it was never just about fighting. It was about belief, heritage, and the unbreakable code of a warrior. Its legacy in Star Trek today. More than 3 decades after its debut, the bat'leth remains a Star Trek icon. It has appeared in Star Trek, Discovery, been referenced in lower decks, and even made appearances in fan productions and museum exhibits. You can buy replicas, participate in bat'leth training courses at conventions, and find it etched into Star Trek video games and comics. But perhaps the most enduring legacy of the bat'leth is how it helped Star Trek reframe an entire alien species. Before the bat'leth, the Klingons were villains with funny eyebrows. After the bat'leth, they were complex, honorable, and deeply cultural beings with a fierce devotion to tradition. It's wild to think we got 3 full seasons of The Next Generation without it. But when it finally